In
So
the
OP.
alpha of Destiny 1, the interceptors were absolutely broken. You were unkillable. So many poor journalists. And I remember saying to Deej, I was like, I'm sorry, I think you might get a couple of disgruntled journalists writing articles. Bife, thank you for joining me once again on Creator Chats, episode numero dos. We got a lot of compliments last week from, or the week before, from the first episode of people seem to enjoy our dynamic, people seem to enjoy the chat. I'm very happy with.
I'm very glad that you invited me back. It tells me the first episode is actually, I did okay, which is good.
You passed the test. I mean, like I said, we literally could chat for hours, and we could just pick topics, and I guarantee we could record a 10-hour podcast if we wanted to. Like we chat behind the scenes many times. So speaking on this 1-hour podcast is honestly pretty easy, but I'm sure we'll have many episodes to go. But appreciate everyone for supporting the first episode of the podcast. The first one was definitely we're still figuring everything out. I believe you can check the links in the description. And the audio versions should be going live on Apple and Spotify, and I think Anchor as well. If they're not available, you can check the description. It'll say whether they've been. They're still waiting for approval, I believe. But those are going up. And also the Clips channel, the Clips YouTube channel with short little highlights and just snippets of the podcast, which are more digestible. Again, if you don't want to watch the full 1-hour podcast, I appreciate not everyone wants to sit through that. But I'm trying to make it as accessible for everyone. You know, if you want to just kind of go through at your own pace and watch 10 minutes at a time, or if you just want to watch the whole thing in one sitting, or if you just want to watch clips or listen to the thing, trying to make it as accessible so you can listen to me and Bife talk while you're playing Gambit or making a sandwich, whatever you're doing. But how have you been, Bife? What have you been up to?
This entire week has just been sort of getting into the rhythm of things again, getting back to some of the videos that I talked about last time on the show. And actually, it's been I don't know about you, I'm thinking of going into a tangent right as we start this.
Go for it.
Because my entire week, it was sort of, the highlight of my entire week was yesterday. And the reason for that is because they released the trailer for Dune, which, oh my god, I've been looking forward to that for so long. So Dune is it's just a movie that's being made by Warner Brothers, but it's based on...
I saw that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's based on Frank Herbert's series of novels. It's some of the best sci-fi that's ever been written. You know, this is a series that people compare to Star Wars, and it looks like it's being done justice, and it's just... Yeah, that's the thing that I want to pump into my veins this week, you know? Like, I need more of that goodness. I've seen all of this stuff for it.
I just remember seeing all over. I mean, it's things like these where when you don't know something, but it just enters your timeline and you kind of scroll past it. I've seen that big giant worm desert thing. It honestly looks like the that Leviathan concept art from remember
from all the way back when? Yeah.
The Cabal homeworld, the giant concept of the huge, what the Leviathan ship is based off of. It's based off a real life, well, not real life, but a real actual worm that lives in the Cabal homeworld. That's what this looks like, Dune.
Yeah. So the entire idea of sandworms, all of the reference materials, such as that exact piece of art you're describing, all of that is a reference back to Dune. So if you're ever wondering where that originates from, even the design of the Leviathan ship, some of it is going to be heralding its way back to Dune.
Even in Destiny?
Yeah, because if the Leviathan ship is based off of the Cabal homeworld and those worms that they found on their homeworld, those worms themselves are a reference to the sandworms of Arrakis, which is the planet which is otherwise known as Dune. It's where all the stuff basically takes place. And yeah, like it's got such a profound impact on sci-fi, and there's little things that will occasionally pop up that you might never have noticed. You know, it's little lines like, I must not fear, fear is the mind killer, and he who controls the spice controls the universe. You know, like, these are things that are very pervasive in pop culture, and for people who know where they're from, everyone immediately is like, yes, exactly, that's the siren call of Arrakis, you know, that's Dune calling me back to where it was. So seeing that realized by the, oh god, I'm trying to remember the director's name, but it's completely escaping me. But he's the same guy who did Blade Runner 2049.
Oh yeah, that was really good. Dennis. I'm seeing on Google Dennis
Villeneuve, I think.
Yeah, Villeneuve. I'm not sure. So yeah, Dennis. That what you just said.
Denis Villeneuve, maybe? I need to
Did he
look
do
back at
Blade
the
Runner?
pronunciation. He did Blade Runner 2049.
Oh yeah, he did.
The,
Yeah, that was a really
sequel.
good film like that. And Arrival and Cicero. And, okay, he's made some really good films. Wow. Yeah, these are some very good.
Yeah.
Cicero, Prisoners, Arrival, Dune, Blade Runner. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like this guy has a lot of credibility as far as bringing worlds to life. And anybody who can take a cult classic like Blade Runner and bring it into the 21st century and create a really faithful remake that in some ways is either really respectful of the original or completely transcends it, that to me is just... It's a real mark of somebody who not only understands the property they're given, but really fleshes out those themes to other logical extents, right? And just, yeah, the fact that he's handling Dune and all of the stuff surrounding it, just, it's absolutely captivating. Like, I'm somebody who's read I'm somebody who's read some of Frank Herbert's stuff. I've not read all of my way through the, 6 books, but any single reference to some of the stuff in there that has been seen is practically speaking spot on, with maybe the change of one character. And it's just, oh my god, I can't get enough of this. I can't get enough. That's what's defined my week.
I can see why people were making a fuss about this now. I can see, it's one of those, like I said, it just pops all over the timeline, but now I can tell why people are excited about this.
Oh yeah.
That makes sense.
This is a universe that has such... surprise, I'm going to witter on about this for the first 10 minutes. Yeah, this is a universe with really rich lore, and the ideas behind it alone, and the ideas behind the story, at very least in the first few books which I've read, they definitely revolve around such incredible concepts for Frank Herbert's time. You know, this is a guy who is writing about what is effectively an ecological novel, right? Before we had anything like climate change. This is a guy who is really into ideas of a tragedy from the perspective of the hero, where there is a fate that they can't avoid. And it's something where it's not this constant ascension to your final destiny, which is glory. No, it's talking about how that destiny is in fact the thing they're trying to avoid their whole life. And it's just, yeah, he's a really fantastic writer, and the source material for the film now is something that people should explore if they're in for a big read. These are really dense books, but yeah, totally should do it. I'm sold.
You sold me. That was something that I was mildly interested on, but now, I'm sold. You sold me on that. Mm-hmm. But it's been a decent week for Destiny. Surprisingly, it comes and goes in quiet weeks, and then all of a sudden a lot happens. I guess Bungie probably time it that way, but we've had some good subclass reveals. We've had the 6-year anniversary of Destiny. We had the new sidearm exotic quest. Yeah, it's been a decent week, but kind of a mix. Obviously, it's one of those when there's new content around the corner. Well, it's weird because there's obviously excitement for the new content, but there's also just the people want to play Destiny, but there isn't a whole lot to do. They go on, they get the Travelers chosen, and then it's just kind of they're wanting more stuff to do. So hearing about new content is cool, but knowing that we have to still wait until November is a bit. You can definitely tell when people are a little bit antsy, but understandably.
Right. I feel like it's a really telling thing when this week and last week a lot of Destiny players have been sort of starting to slowly shift out to other things because of the wait. You know, this is the time at which normally we'd have our DLC with us. This time last year, when we also had the delay for Shadowkeep, people were starting to try out Borderlands 3 because that had just released. You know, this entire thing is basically just a big cycle of everybody finding things to fill their time before they need to come back to Destiny. And you know what? More power to everybody who's doing that, and it's a good idea because you know it means people don't burn out, and that's regardless of whether you're a normal player or a content creator, that is really important because it's all about having fun at the end of the day. We sweat this stuff and we grind and we play hardcore, but at the end of the day, we do that partially because there's a total love of it. You know, do you remember week 1 doing Riven in Last Wish?
It was a very delirious sleep deprived. It was a very stressful period, but I vividly remember it. Very good week.
So for me, it was one of those periods that's absolutely as you describe, but by the end of it, when we'd actually killed that thing, it was the joy that I was feeling, my hands were shaking. And that's the kind of stuff that I live and breathe for as far as Destiny's concerned. And those are the moments that I aspire to really jump forward to. These are the reasons why I play, and therefore don't burn out.
I was going to say, speaking of the raid race, that's been very. There's been a lot of questions and controversy around. Is it going to be ruined by cheaters? Because this is the first time. This is the first time a raid in Destiny is launching with the Steam cheat kind of system. Because last time when Garden launched, obviously it just moved to Steam and there weren't any cheats developed. But this is the first time in Destiny history that, I mean, I was thinking this earlier, I'm not sure if you know, why are cheats, like, does Blizzard Battle.net have much better anti-cheat? Why were there no cheats like that, and why is it such a thing on Steam now?
So to the best of my knowledge, Blizzard's anti-cheat is just stronger. You'd still occasionally encounter a cheater or two, but you could be pretty sure that they would be gone if you reported them and if they were gone the next day. You'll remember that if we went over to, the moment we went over to Steam, it became the Wild West. It wasn't just a thing of like, these players are here and they're doing all their nonsense. It was also this thing of, these players are here and the game does not have the same supported infrastructure as it did on the Activision servers, So it's just a little example, but look at the microcosm of names, right? Like people being able to change their names on Steam alone would have been a hard enough thing to add to tracking stuff. But it also kind of shows how Steam is much more hands-off, because you'll get all sorts of terrible things that are, the names of players. I mean, from my own personal experience, when I was playing competitive with Bob and a friend, we were trying to go for Legend. He was helping me get Not Forgotten. And in the process, we matched people who repeatedly stream sniped us and decided to change their names to racist slur variants of mine. So my name is N-word was a very common one that they would throw up there, right?
Yeah, you get all sorts.
Exactly. Stuff like this is, it exemplifies Steam's like very hands-off procedure to all of it. And that meant that ultimately, a similar kind of process gets done with a lot of their own sort of systems with regards to third-party games that will then have like some kind of online infrastructure. Because they have, they've got VAC bans, right? Which is something internal to all of Valve's products and Valve's games. And it covers like a whole bunch of other stuff too. But ultimately, VAC bans were something that you could look up in someone's profile, but you couldn't necessarily immediately act on in Destiny.
Yeah,
because it's two different sets of infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the logical thing would be like, oh, if they have a VAC ban on their account, clearly they should just not be allowed to play Destiny.
Yeah.
But, the two different bits of architecture are separate, It'd
yeah,
be
you
like
just
saying,
see people online. It's just like they've got this person's been cheating, and it's like seeing someone next to you in the street and then just seeing this guy has murdered 17 people and still robbed 13 banks. It's just like, why am I playing in a lobby with someone that's been confirmed to? Does anyone monitoring this? Does anyone care? Like, what's going on here? Why am I in a game with someone that's got a VAC ban confirmed? Like, what's going on?
Exactly, right? And the big problem with Steam then also just becomes like, the fact that you then have two companies that would need to work together on something like that, Like, undoubtedly, Destiny is one of the top played games on Steam just because of the raw number of players that jump into it every day. It's not going to be as big as some of the other games out there, but it's still up there, Like, our daily player population is not bad. So when you come from the perspective of the guys over at Steam, there is some small vested interest to making sure that this works well, but it requires coordination from both sides of things. And whilst I say that there's at least a little bit of incentive for the guys who work on Steam with Valve to actually, underpin Destiny with a really good moderation team, or just with the infrastructure that they would need to ensure cheaters don't get into the game, I still feel like it's one of those things where Valve has not always taken a lot of stuff seriously generally. Like, yeah, it would be a really good thing for them to do, but I think they probably won't do it. So a lot of this has to be on Bungie.
Yeah, I think Bungie are probably quite stressed that a lot of, especially, I mean, obviously the launch of Trials, but especially things like the Raid are kind of hanging in the balance of how much they can handle this whole cheater system. But it is weird because it's the first time PvE is starting to, obviously it's a PC thing, on consoles not really much of a problem, but obviously with the raid race, that's led by PC. So for the first time you're about to see that. That's why I'm just really not like in a good way, but just curious to see how this does go on. Obviously, Bungie's been quiet. They might say something soon. They probably will, but they normally don't say much because it's about security, so they don't delve into details. But just knowing that what people will, it's because it's never happened before. People can't imagine it will happen, but when it comes to a raid race, not they're going to get acknowledgement as being the actual winners, but people can use cheats and just glitch the boss and have infinite health, infinite ammo, and they can bypass mechanics. They don't need to know the mechanics, but they can brute force them. And even with contest modifier, it's, I mean, as we know, cheaters are very, very, very sneaky in this game. So they're finding ways, and they've had a year to plan for it. So it's a very, I think a lot of people are very watching with curious eyes to see how this unfolds, this raid race with cheaters.
I think there's a lot that's really going to be quite telling, but my hope is that the guys inside Bungie would be able to monitor each team that's progressed through a certain encounter. Like, I it sounds crazy to even say, but I almost hope that they're watching these things like Big Brother, where it's just like they can track individual teams, and they can look at like what their different stats are as they're going through the raid. So let's say there is a team where all 6 members have 0 deaths and across the entire raid, and they've cleared 3 encounters. It's like, that's a little bit sus. And then you look at the accuracy, it's like, oh, I see. So all of these guys have 100% accuracy on their guns too. And the most used weapon is a machine gun. Okay, that's very interesting when clearing these things. Ooh,
100% accuracy. It's pretty accurate for a machine gun.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. But no, like there are things which you can use to tell. The problem is that I feel like it's going to be one of these things of, if they're not able to play quote unquote Big Brother with this, it's just going to be these moments where players will feel like there's an incentive to sort of give themselves cheats just to gain that little bit of an edge, right? So like, let's say it is one of those really tense moments where you need to be able to just hit your shots on something and deal a specific amount of damage to like a key enemy in the raid. You know, those are going to be the moments where cheaters get their advantage, because they'll never choke, you know? They'll never choke. They'll always have that stuff handed to them, and it basically not only cheapens the encounter, but also is going to make sure that they will never fail the key mechanic, you know?
I think at the same time, though, I mean, the actual raid race is obviously going to be streamed. Most people participating are going to be streaming. So Bungie is obviously going to be watching those teams. But at the same time, if there are cheaters entering, they're obviously not going to be streaming. And I mean, technically, a team could go and get worlds first, but Bungie might just not acknowledge them. There might be a bunch of teams that go and actually technically get worlds first, but I think Bungie is going to manually, obviously, choose who is the. I mean, yeah, you just might never know. There might be a bunch of teams that get worlds first, but Bungie never tells you about them. They just can automatically disqualify them, and they're not streaming or making content, so no one's going to know about them. But they know they've done it. But Bungie, as we've seen, they have the ability to manually select who gets what the raid exotic at the end, the first fire team. So they should be able to see who's the legitimate. And I think that could be a possibility. They might just completely just sweep them under the rug, and just because again they can't stream their perspectives, they're cheating. So we might just never hear about them. But obviously the legitimate teams, they're going to be broadcast, and we're going to see them. So we'll see the actual worlds first.
And beyond all of just that, like, even if they're not broadcast, Bungie always does the thing of saying, we have reports of a world's first finish and stand by for verification. Yeah. So,
been doing it since
it's
day.
Clear, yeah, exactly, right? Like, it's clear that they have a system in place. What that system is, obviously, they won't disclose for the sake of security, but, you know, if it turns out that there are cheaters in the day one team, I expect us to not even hear about that day one team. And, you know, even like I can imagine a point at which there's like streams out there where they are cheating on Twitch and they're just like doing it so they can try and get through the raid as quickly as possible. I expect even people like that to get grassed on really quickly.
Probably.
Because like, yeah, like this is the thing too. Everybody understands what's at stake here, you know? Like raid races make careers, you know?
Absolutely. Big platform. Huge.
Like Triple Rec got world's first hard mode Crota.
Really?
And it's not like... world's first hard mode Crota on Twitch. Right? And here's the thing. There was one team that made it before him.
Right.
And they were not on Twitch. They weren't broadcast. They were nowhere. They were actually, crazily enough, they were like a pickup team from LFG. But here's the thing. When it comes down to it, Triple Rec being the world first on Twitch to get hard mode done helped to build his career, you know? And you see it with a whole bunch of other things. The reason why members of Redeem and T1 are so huge within the content creation scene on Twitch and YouTube is partly because of the fact that a lot of their members have been part of day one teams, you know? So yeah, it's a really big deal. And I don't think Bungie needs to be sold on the gravity of all of that. But what I can totally attest to is the fact that I'm still with everyone else. I'm kind of concerned about cheaters on day one.
Yeah, I think like Redeem and Glad and those guys are prime examples of how like they just constantly made a name for themselves by every raid. Always, I'm not sure how many worlds first they've got. I'm sure a lot, but they're always in the conversation. And slowly in time, 4 is it? Slowly in time, you just see, and you kind of know you kind of come to expect. Like, I want to see what the Redeem guys doing because you know they're very good players. So you want to see how they'll do it, and then you got to see them get known for being obviously very good at the game, being PvE speedrunners. And then in time, they started to create content and bring more of the personalities out. And now they're some of the biggest personalities in the community. So they've done such a good job with that, just like branching out. And like you said, it's such a big platform. You can build a career off of, because everyone's watching. There's hundreds of thousands, millions of people watching the raid race across all platforms. So it
takes over Twitch.
Time to shine. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's time to shine.
And even if you don't win, like, take a look at Dato. Not that he needed his career to be made, but what are the 4 numbers that everyone now associates with Dato, right? Like, 2402 is infamous. Like, the raid makes legends. So the integrity of it's got to be protected.
It's also important how you handle it as well. Of course, how you handle it is majorly key, and he obviously wears it as kind of a meme and he embraces it. But how you handle the situation is always everything. But it's been a pretty decent week in terms of news. Quite a bit has come out. One of the main things I want to ask you about is the man himself, Uldren, Prince Uldren. Probably one of the most important developments in his storyline we got with the new sidearm, which was Zavala pretty much basically confirming the Vanguard dare is real, which basically confirms that Uldren should be the next Hunter Vanguard, which has been I mean, I think you've been saying it for a while. I've been saying it since day. Like, Uldren he has to, because he killed Cade. The way the Vanguard dare it works.
Yep.
The way Cade even became the Vanguard in the first place is that once you kill the Vanguard, you have to become the new Vanguard. So Uldren, by definition, just had to.
That's actually, there's a little error there.
Okay.
So it's not specifically who kills it. Like, each Vanguard has a specific dare, right? Like, Cade never killed his predecessor Andal.
Yeah.
Like,
Tanix.
you could totally make... Yeah, Tanix did. But, like, the entire thing is basically the dare is self-defined by each hunter. And so you basically have the ability for them to step into the shoes of the position of Vanguard. But it's bigger. Like, a Vanguard dare is one thing, but a hunter dare is like a general point of their culture. Yeah. It's a little bit like if you and I are hunters and we're both drunk in a bar, and then one of us says, hey, you know that Fallen dude everybody keeps on talking about? Yeah. Okay. 10,000 glimmer to the first person who kills it from the other guy. Hunter dare? And the moment you metaphorically shake on it, it's done. It's like a blood pact. You can't, on your own honor, like, jump out of it. You can't back out when it's done. No escaping. So, it's done on Hunter's honor, which is why the Hunter's dare is allowed to persist, because otherwise they wouldn't fill their vanguards. And in this instance, Cade made his dare into exactly as it said. The person who kills him has to take all of his titles and possessions. So that's, not just Ace of Spades, but also things such as, the position of Hunter Vanguard.
Yeah, and, so with Andal, it was more of like, obviously Cade and Andal were very good friends. It was more of like an honor, picking up the mantle after him. But with obviously Cade, wasn't quite as amicable with Uldren. So Uldren, if you think about it thematically, it's a redemption arc. You can see Bungie is plain as day. They're plotting out a redemption arc. This is going to be Uldren's route for forgiveness. This is how he earns his way back into, the Guardians. I mean, it's how he earns the respect of other Guardians, because he obviously killed Cade, but it wasn't really him. It was him in a past life, and it was being controlled by Riven and Savathun, so it wasn't really even Uldren's fault. It was kind of being brainwashed, but it is still the guy that looks like Uldren is still the guy that killed Cade. So as punishment, he is going to have to become Vanguard. And it's what we kind of thought would happen for a long time, but for the first time this week, there was, what does it say? So it was Zavala talking to Anna Bray. I remember even last time we were playing the Prophecy Dungeon, I was saying how there was an audio cue where, who was it? I think it was the Drifter calling Anna Bray lazy for not picking up the Hunter Vanguard role, which is kind of implying that they're looking for someone obviously to fill it, but it's been a long time.
Oh yeah.
But now with this time, we've always speculated the Vanguard there should mean Uldren is going to get it, but now Zavala's like, we're not picking you, Anna. We're picking the man who killed Cade. So that's obviously how it's shaping up.
So here's the thing. I think what a lot of people, I think people are building this to be more than it actually is. And yes, it totally is one of these things of like, they know that Cade's Hunter Dare was whoever kills him becomes Hunter Vanguard. But they've also like postulated on this in a whole bunch of different ways. And the effects that you talked about, like the Drifter saying to Anna, like, you lazy Vanguard. Like, there's been so much of that throughout the entire world of Destiny, and those repercussions have bled through everything. So, like, when it comes to the whole Drifter calling Anna lazy thing, when it comes to how it's affected hunters, you have these different lore entries talking about how hunters are basically abandoning their old dens in the city and are going out on long missions away from it so that they can avoid the responsibility of potentially being picked up from Vanguard missions and then being forced into the position of mentor, because hunters don't want to do this.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Like, yeah, it's had huge repercussions across the entire world, not just because the Vanguard split, but now because the hunters are more split from the rest of the Guardians. And when it comes down to the actual thing of Zavala talking about, the Vanguard Dare and the fact that they weren't going to get Anna to fill it, I don't think that Zavala knows Uldren is alive again. I think that nobody knows Uldren is alive except for a few Guardians who have encountered him in the tower, according to the one lore tab.
Interesting.
That we got about him last Christmas.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be one of those big reveal moments for our characters in universe. And I think that's what's going to be really key about it. This is another one of those points at which Bungie has just very lightly tapped the plot that they're talking on there. And it's one of these moments where they're saying like, yep, we're signposting this. We still know where we're going with it. Stay tuned. And everybody picking up on the Uldren thing from that conversation between Anna and Zavala that we got through some of the new lore tabs. Yeah, like that's totally the right place to be. I don't think Zavala knows that Uldren is a Guardian now.
That's a very interesting point.
Change it for everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
because Uldren is currently somewhere in the cosmodrome, hiding out, but he always wears his helmet so no one can see him. And apparently when he does get seen, people aren't very nice to him. But he doesn't know why. It really is like this. I do love that, and there's a reason why everyone is glued to the story. It's by far one of the most interesting. You've got a guy just who's become a completely different character and is one of the most hated characters, and he's supposed to fill this role. Something you said earlier is definitely spot on. Is that something a lot of people don't realize is the Hunter Vanguard role isn't a job that any hunter wants. It's not a good. People see it as like, this onerous. Like, I get to be the Hunter Vanguard. No one actually wants, especially hunters, they don't want to be tied. It's a boring job. No one wants this job. And it's actually punishment for Uldren. It's not, people see it as like an honor or like a reward of Uldren gets to be the Vanguard and be in charge. But really, it's a job. It's a really boring job that no hunter wants. And again, what else would Uldren be doing? He's not going to be a Guardian. So it's absolutely perfectly fitting that he would have to redeem himself by doing this job that no one wants and earn his title as a real hunter. So all the cards are right in front of us.
I gotta say this, dude. You hit the idea that it's a redemption arc playing on the head, and I think that's exactly what it's going to be. But I think that the role of being a Hunter Vanguard is actually a reward for Uldren at the end of the redemption arc. Because you're totally right about the way that hunters treat it, right? Like, it's a position where you need to sit in the tower all day, and you basically have all this responsibility. Hunters value independence and the ability to explore the system, right? That's what they've always wanted.
To run free.
But Uldren right now, in his year or so of being a Guardian, has only experienced one thing, and that is exclusion. He has always been excluded from Guardian populations. He's always been a bit of an outcast and a loner, and that's probably going to lead to a lot of things where he has a lot of, these feelings of an imposter syndrome or just a feeling that he's generally not accepted. And I think that the Vanguard position as a result is going to be a reward for him because he's going to be able to welcome in new Guardians as their mentor. And bigger than just that, he's also going to belong within a structure that he technically belongs in as a Guardian, right? He has a purpose and he belongs. And that sense of belonging, I think, is really important as the reward for his redemption arc, He has to prove to us that, yes, he is worthy of the title Guardian, and there's got to be some form of atonement for the death of Cade, and there's got to be a moment in which he lays it all out for us and says, it wasn't who I am now, but regardless, I am so sorry that I did this. You know, like there's got to be that moment where he reconnects with Guardians and shows that he's a different person. And I think that when that happens, it's going to be a really satisfying story moment for everybody. I really can't wait to see what they do with that.
I mean, I guess people think differently about it, but I've never really had any sort of... I've never thought that Uldren needs to really be forgiven or like he's really done anything wrong. Because again, it seems like he has, but realistically, he's a different person. Like Uldren as Marasov's brother and Uldren as this resurrected Guardian, they're literally... When you get resurrected, you're basically a new person, clean wipe. But even if Uldren was the same person... He was brainwashed by Riven and Savathun. Like, it wasn't really, and he was trying to do it for a good cause, for his sister, trying to save his sister. But you don't like. I don't know. It's that I don't really think he's not really in my bad books. But I understand why a lot of Guardians hate him. But me personally, I think it's I don't think it's a big deal. It wasn't. It wasn't his fault. It was
I'm
Savathun's
totally
fault.
with you on that. Yeah, like he's not a bad character at the end of the day. And even with all the manipulation there, I can still technically forgive him. It's one of these moments, though, where I can also understand why it cuts differently for other players. You know, like, you have a visceral... In fact, you know, this has been explored before with two different things. I'm going to talk philosophy for a second.
Go for it.
I believe it's Theseus's... maybe not Theseus. Maybe Theseus or Odysseus's ship. It's this concept from ancient Greece, where it's basically this ship that the hero is born out on into the sea. And as time goes on, you know... different parts of it get destroyed and have to be replaced. And by the end of it, not a single timber of the ship is the same as what left when it returns to the original harbor.
Right.
And the philosophical question becomes, is the ship the same ship as the one that originally set out? Right? Because everything has been replaced. Uldren has very much had metaphorical timbers replaced, you know? And it's one of these big questions of saying, hey, how much of this qualifies as the old person? And for some people, they're going to disagree and say he looks like the metaphorical duck, he quacks like it, even if he's, you know, trying to be, you know, somebody who atones for his past mistakes, and even if he is a different person and doesn't have the same memories, I don't care. Some people can make that argument, and it's a philosophical break, you know, like, I feel like I can kind of understand and respect it, even if I personally disagree.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
they've played with this a lot before.
I think the cosmodrome is a big part of this because obviously the lore tab has said Uldren is currently in the cosmodrome, which is obviously near the towers. That's where he's hiding out. Not near the tower, but in the same planet. But the cosmodrome is obviously returning in Beyond Light as a location. And there's also the Bungie showed off the Triumph page, and the icon for the Vanguard or possibly the Cosmodrome is the same icon that's on Uldren's chest, so kind of implying that Uldren has a connection to the Cosmodrome. But I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of this, but obviously it seems to be shaping up very similar to that original supercut of Destiny as the Crow, where you meet him in the Cosmodrome, he points a gun at you. So I would almost guarantee there's going to be some cutscene when you first meet Uldren. We're going to wander into the Cosmodrome for the first time in Destiny 2, and then we're going to meet Uldren probably in the exact same. I really think Bungie, it's right there for them to do it. But we'll probably meet him, and he obviously won't know who we are, and then maybe we're going to be tasked to bring him back. But I just want to know how they're going to bring him in. I think it's going to be such a big moment how they bring him in. I want to see Akora's reaction, Zavala's reaction. I have no idea how they're going to do it. Obviously, we have clues. We know the Cosmodrome. We know the Vanguard there, like we talked about. But I want to see how they do it.
You know what I kind of want? I kind of want a subversion of that. Everybody refers back to why is the city breathing down my neck? You know, why don't you come down so we can talk? Out here in the wild, this is how we talk. I want a subversion of that, where our Guardian sees Uldren and goes into a blind rage. You know, and... you know, kicks him back onto a thing and just like pulls out the hand cannon. And then Uldren says to us, hey, why don't you put that down so we can talk?
Yeah,
and
that
then
could happen.
Our character speaks again. You know, because it's one of these poignant moments whenever our character actually voices
That's
things.
a very good shout.
You know, and says, out here in the wild, this is how we talk. And then something interrupts it before we can kill him again.
Role reversal.
Or his ghost shows up. Like, I think that would be a really great way of referencing things back, but showing that the plot is very much different from where they originally planned all this out. I would love to see that. That would be so cool.
There's just so many weird parallels, though, because the original the original Crow character was supposed to be Cade. He was described as Cade. If you read the Kotaku article, he's described in the exact same way as the same way that Cade did turn out to be. But at the point that they made it, Cade didn't actually exist. So Uldren, or the Crow, which was the model of Uldren, was early Cade, and then they obviously brought Cade in. But now Uldren is literally going to be the actual original Crow that he was supposed to be. So it's just, they've resurrected him into the old character that he was supposed to be in the supercut, and it's just it's strange and clever and good. Obviously they didn't plan to do it, but the way they're just kind of looping it around full circle to what we saw in that 12, 13 trailer, and now in 2020 we're probably going to get some kind of, I mean, we're meeting Uldren in the cosmodrome, so they're definitely going to do some kind of parallel with that, I think.
For sure. I just like everything about that. I'm going to be glued to my screen when it happens. I can't wait to see it.
I wouldn't even be surprised. No, go on.
Yeah, for people who are exploring this the first time, I'm really excited to see what those reactions are, because they don't have the weight of that expectation to a certain extent, but also it's going to be really cool to just watch that reaction, if only because we're going to be sitting here being like, it feels like we've seen this before, you know, like there's something beautiful about that. Anyway, sorry, you were going to say.
But I was just going to say, speaking of the reminiscing on old times of Destiny, Destiny 1 is now in year 7. Feel old yet? Destiny 1 is in year 7. It's 6 years old, so it's entering its 7th year, but it's 6 entire years old. Destiny 1, which was
mate. We've played Destiny for nearly a decade. We've played Destiny
a long time.
For 6 years.
I mean, it's crazy because they obviously they launched it with the 10-year plan, but it's the time is just going away, and all of a sudden now we're in year 7. It's like we're kind of approaching that 10th year, which obviously Destiny 2 Beyond Light, you can see how Bungie is. They're obviously not going to drop the game, but once they reach year 10 after Lightfall, that will be essentially the 10-year span. Obviously, lots have changed, did not go to plan. But they will have essentially reached that 10-year goal, and I would imagine they're probably going to slow content down and probably maybe do an expansion every 2 years or see how things go. But the 10-year plan, it seemed, I still remember in 2014 when we were looking at it, thinking of the Vex Void and the Forge of the Gods.
Oh my god, I remember this. Comet 2 and all that.
Yeah, the Comet. What was the Taken King name? I think it was Plague of the Gods. There was
something like that, yeah.
Plague of Darkness.
Yes, no, that was it, yeah.
And then they had planned to release a new Destiny game every 2 years. That was the original contract. Clearly, like, that was in hindsight. It's just to release an entire Destiny game. But obviously, Activision were thinking about it like a COD game. That's how Activision are. They publish games like COD, and they have tons of studios to make a COD game every year. But Bungie went into that plan, and then I'm sure quickly realized, hang on, we can't just pump out entire Destiny releases every 2 years. We can barely do a big expansion every 2 years, but it took them a while to find their feet. But I mean, on that note, I do think it's pretty remarkable. I'm not sure many people talk about this, but realistically, this is the most content Bungie's ever promised to us. We've got 3 big expansions, 3 years guaranteed. Bungie's never come forward and promised that much content in advance. We would have wished for that back in 2014. We were wishing for a small little Vex Void DLC. If Bungie had told us you're getting the huge Beyond Light, you're getting Europa, and then you're getting a Witch Queen, Savathun, Dreadnought, whatever, and then you're getting Lightfall, Darkness, Pyramids. Like, if they had told us that back in 2015, we would have lost our minds. But
you saw me during the reveals for Destiny 2. You saw me reacting to the Taken King trailer,
E3, all of them. Yeah,
E3.
I heard you scream down the PlayStation. You can probably replay the PlayStation conference and hear Bife screaming when I think the Warlock Stormcaller was shown off. You can probably hear, but I remember being next to you. So that was hilarious. That theater, you screamed.
This is worth talking about, actually, because this is a very entertaining memory. E3 2015, we were playing Taken King for the first time. It's first ever game of Rift, and I really quickly managed to get my super up in this game. And I got a triple down with the super.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I was using Force Lightning. I think I yelled, I'd be prepared to bleep this, by the way. Apologies to your editor. I yelled something along the lines of unlimited power. And then Deej is like right next to me, just stares. He's like, And he gives that face being like, so you like that? And I just sort of looked back at him and was, I love this game. And they just kept on playing and it was, bellissimo.
I remember that. I specifically remember that. I remember Gamescom play sessions. I think we were playing against press, who obviously, press that weren't too versed in Destiny, we'll say that way, and then a bunch of YouTubers who play a little bit of Destiny, and the teams might have been a little bit unbalanced. We'll put it that way.
I needed my sweeper bot emote. You know,
we might have got a few. We ran out of medals in. In fact, I'm pretty sure. Didn't you get like technically the world's first? We ran out of medals. I'm pretty sure in the capture session. Obviously, it doesn't
in
really.
the capture session.
Technically,
so it's one of these moments where like a bunch of YouTubers got a ton of medals that had never been seen before.
Because they introduced medals. They were the first, weren't they?
Yeah. Some of the people in the game went AFK. And I, at that point, was just trawling around looking for things. And I got a we ran out of medals in the thing, and I threw it up on YouTube. And because some of these guys were AFK, I also got a Ghost in the Night. And I thought that was a world's first too. Turns out Mr. Fruit also got one. So I was in this place of like, oh, God, okay. But no, dude, like, the entire thing just ended up being hilarious, because this became like our repeat thing, where every Gamescom we'd come back, and it would be, another Unbroken, another we ran. Okay, he's got like a 5-piece in this one game as well. Okay, we just bring home this great footage from Gamescom and E3 and all these places where it was basically like this mismatch between YouTubers and journalists, and it's just like, I'm really sorry, man. It looks like the guys over at Polygon or wherever are just gonna have like footage of respawns constantly.
I specifically remember it was 2014 E3. I think the beta was playable, or was it the alpha? No, it would have been the alpha. Yeah. So the alpha just got shown off, and it was First Light and Rusted Lands. And I specifically remember completely seshing Destiny non-stop at the booth. Because we were with Activision, we could get in a lot more often. Obviously, we're recording and getting footage, so we're making content for it. But I remember the interceptors in the alpha.
They were so
alpha of Destiny 1, the interceptors were absolutely broken. You were unkillable. The fire rate of the missiles was like unlimited. They just one hit the splash. I went around and I just absolutely murdered so many poor journalists. And I remember saying to Deej, I was like, I'm sorry, I think you might get a couple of disgruntled journalists writing articles because they faced up against this guy in this tank who would not stop killing them the entire time. But I just spawn killed them so many times. The interceptor was absolutely broken. I was thinking, these journalists are going to write some very negative articles if they're like, I just played PvP and it was really bad. All I did is I just got shot by this guy in a tank that was flying around. some many
Fraser back in the day. Do you remember Fraser Boss?
Oh yeah.
Part of Math Class, also one of the Bungie ninjas, like
awesome
one
guy.
of the OG Destiny content creators. Really lovely dude. Yeah, Fraser actually played into that joke so much, because when it was the beta and everybody's playing together and it was like the days of Team Space Bus, he created like 1 or 2 videos for the beta, and one of them was just an interceptor montage where he claimed that he was the Skillterceptor. And I just sat there, I was like, there's no way this is not getting nerfed.
Oh yeah, he got nerfed.
Oh, thank God too, because man, that was crikey. That was bad. That was the original Felwinter's Lie, ladies and gentlemen. That was the original OP gun. Yeah, it was good. It was good fun.
Yeah,
that's what beta's for.
Destiny is old. Destiny is very old. Seems like yesterday when it just launched, and we were just excited to hop into the Vault of Glass and Dark Below, and all of a sudden now we're in 2020, and now there's everything's changed. The gaming world looks very different. Destiny is free. It's on PC. There have
been a million Destiny killers, and none of them have killed it.
Yeah, that's also definitely worth noting. I saw a lot of people talk about that. All of the Destiny killers, where are they at now? But I mean, it's like I've always said in response to that argument is nothing. Like the only thing that can kill Destiny is Destiny, and that goes for anything, whether it's an artist, a creator, a thing. It's more often than not, the thing itself is the only thing that can take it down. It's not going to be competition or outside sources. Like no game is just going to come like unless you can do a service better than the original thing, i.e. unless a game can offer better shooting mechanics and better design and skyboxes and just the graphics and just everything that Destiny is, but essentially the feel of the game, which is very hard to replicate. The satisfying feel of Destiny, the loot, just the engrams, all the little things that Bungie do to make their game good. Unless you can do that better than Bungie, you're not like that's just how competition works. It's not like unless you do something better than them, you're not going to beat them. The only way Destiny's going to fail is if Destiny fails themselves and if they start making a bad game. Right? But no other game is just going to come along and just Division's here and Anthem's here, and we're just going to just move over. Like you can have in parallel different games, but they're all different in a sense, so they're not really competition.
Right. And more importantly, the whole idea is not to kill the game. Like the minute that someone branded itself as a Destiny killer is parallel to the similar moment when things branded themselves as the WoW killer. Because it's not about killing your competition. Like, it's just not, you know? Like, that's a complete mistake to sort of understand what it is. It's about standing out in that space. Final Fantasy XIV remade itself, and for all of the, like, terrible quirks that game had at launch, now it's actually really competent, according to everyone I know who's played it. And it's one of these moments where they have never once said that they are the quote-unquote Destiny killer. But it's one of these moments where they are clearly competition to Destiny. They are in that kind of looter, like, persistent, massively multiplayer genre. But it's also one of these moments where their lack of comparison has given them room to breathe. You know, they've been able to do their own thing. Yeah, exactly. Like, the guys over at Ubisoft Massive, I think, got screwed by some of the initial marketing that Ubisoft did, because Ubisoft tried to go after Destiny's crown and it did not work. It really didn't, you know, and everybody sat there and said the Division's going to be a Destiny killer, and it's like, you know, like I think some people very predictably saw that, like, no matter how good the Division was going to be from that point, like, it would always be held to a standard that was going to be completely impossible to attain.
Yep.
Like, just even if Destiny just treaded water, the comparison of something was always going to screw it. You know? Like, that's just the way it is. You
it's just
see
like
yourself as a killer.
It's just a different game. If you look at Division, that's why. I mean, it's a visual thing. Doesn't matter how good the loot is or the gunplay mechanics. They're different games. This is a post-apocalyptic game set in a very dark and depressive kind of. That's the gritty feel. Whereas Destiny is flying through space and shooting aliens. Like they're not like. The only people, in my experience, the only people that could brand the game as killers are people that are looking for the game, people that don't like the game in the first place and are looking for it to die. Like, no, you never hear a Destiny fan talking about another game like it's going to kill Destiny, because anyone that knows would just know that's not possible. And I've seen that with Call of Duty every single year. It's the COD killer. And again, like Call of Duty, Battlefield, they're just different games. And sometimes they try and be similar, and they've obviously had overlap sometimes, but they're just different games. And as you've seen with COD, like I just said, nothing can kill COD but COD. When COD starts making bad games, when they make games that aren't in the time period that people are interested in, like Advanced Warfare and Ghosts and Black Ops 4 and all of the ones that just departure from what it was built from, that's how Call of Duty is going to decline. When it starts being bad itself, it's not going to decline because of Battlefield or because of any other game. It's only going to decline because itself is declining. But now it's it's back in Modern Warfare, back in Black Ops, and it's going right back up. So it's just not really how the game system works.
I mean, it goes back to a quote that Jim Sterling keeps on saying, which I think is very true, which is that market leaders don't follow, they lead.
Yep, exactly.
And it's to say, like, yes, Destiny is not the first loot game that's ever been done, but people who are trying to emulate Destiny's success without understanding their own game and embracing what it could have been, they're doing something fundamentally wrong. By that same token, don't try and reinvent the wheel and stay away from something so you can keep your identity unique. That's what killed Anthem, but, these are the things that ultimately define why certain games are successful. Just like with COD, it's a market leader. It leads.
Lead from the front.
I know that reference.
Isn't Anthem getting a big update overhaul? When is that? Soon? Or this year?
I'm not sure when that is. I kind of feel like it might be sometime next year. Like, I don't believe for a second they drop it during November, when this is already the most packed November that I think anyone has ever seen. But yeah, Anthem is getting a complete overhaul, and I really hope that it goes well. Like, I've had my time of resenting the way that game was developed, and I've had my time of sort of not wanting to see it, and I've had my time of being disappointed. I've made peace with the fact that it launched in a mediocre state, but like when it does release, I really do hope they take good cues from everything else that's been shown thus far.
It's a game I wish was good. Yeah. Like it looks so amazing. Like just playing the Storm. Like I didn't. All of my play experience was just playing the Storm, and it was so much fun. Even if the gameplay, even if I was getting glitched every menu and losing my progress and all the problems at launch, like you flying around. Like again, that's something you can't do in Destiny. So it's,
right, like flight and the idea of the javelins and all the different suits that worked so well. Like they had part of their core that was fundamentally brilliant. And the shooting and the storytelling and the loot system were what let that game down, Like, yeah. I feel like if the core is too busted, it'll never succeed. That's kind of what happened to Anthem,
But I mean, like you said, as long as they just focus on the unique things that no other game does, like flying, then again, just focus on those good elements that no other game does, like flying around in a javelin and shooting aliens, and just the kind of aesthetic of that open world exploration. Like it really was very much an open world game. So if they can just double down on that, but then get all the, I'm not too familiar in the problems with the loot system, but I just know it wasn't too well received. I just remember, a lot of people saying it's got massive potential, but it didn't quite hit the mark. Yeah. But I'm optimistic. I'm 100%. Hoping it.
So I think. I won't go into a huge rant about it, but to put it blankly, a lot of the maths behind the loot system didn't work. So you could have the end result was that people found out that you could take the very starting assault rifle you had and then compare it to their equivalent of an exotic assault rifle, and it would do practically the same damage.
I remember that. Yeah.
And that was kind of just like what killed it for a bunch of people. The moment that your fundamental mathematics behind your loot is that broken, like there's no incentive to play anymore. Like nobody cares.
But those are like deep game code things that probably Bungie spent a lot of time fixing, just tweaking the numbers and damage and multipliers and progression and making the difference between rare and uncommon and legendary, exotic, and actually making weapons feel that way instead of just, I do remember seeing the starting auto rifle was like the highest DPS weapon in the game, wasn't it? Yeah.
Something along those lines, yeah. And it's just... That's just a fundamental problem with things. But it's not like other games haven't had stuff like that before. Like, speaking of Destiny 1 nostalgia, you remember how back in Vault of Glass, Crota, all these other things, heavy ammo just vanished from your inventory if you died?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember how in Destiny 1 they had to recode the entire way that heavy ammo dropped in the environment so that it would work properly? Like, they had to fundamentally rip out a part of their game and fix it and put it back.
Spaghetti code.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, that's kind of the level that I feel the problems of Anthem start to even vaguely pass by. They're out there as far as their damage goes with regards to, like, starting weapons being as bad as... being on the same par as, like, exotics.
Yeah,
but,
endgame.
Yeah. Stuff's crazy, dude.
Yeah, I think it's... what was I going to say? I had something really good to say, but I've forgotten. It's completely slipped my mind. What we're talking about, Anthem, the
Destiny 1 nostalgia.
Oh yeah, but Destiny, the game code. That's what I was going to say. It is really impressive how much Bungie seem to have a lot more control over their engine these days, and with Destiny 2, a lot more than Destiny 1. In Destiny 1, the narrative was clearly that we're kind of we're doing the best with what we've got here. Our tools are outdated. It takes us 2 days to load up a world and move a block 1 inch. But now Bungie are doing a lot of things, some for the good, some not so good. A lot of things, they clearly have a lot more power over their engine. Like, for example, they can delete or disable weapons, which they never used to be able to do. But I remember when they started becoming a thing in Destiny 2, where like the Rat King, I think, was the first one, and obviously Telesto and many others. But one day you'd wake up and it was just like, oh, this weapon is disabled. You can't use it anymore. And they can now disable perks as well, can't they? They've got that ability. They can do a lot of things they never used to. Like back in the day, that would just be... There was a lot of... How many raid problems were there because of certain weapons and things that had to get banned, and now they can just disable perks. But back in the day, like certain weapons would just break the entire game and they'd have to do drastic things just because they didn't have the control to be able to disable individual perks and weapons, and they were just game-breaking bugs.
Like, best example, I think, ends up being D2, how... Claws of Ahamkara, or Silver Ahamkara's Grasp, basically there was a mechanic by which you could throw the smoke and get the auto reloads back as you would in Season of Opulence, and Bungie was able to like instantly like basically cancel out the exotic before the raid, just stop it being used, as you said. Disable it. There's the word I'm looking for. Wow. But yeah, you know, like stuff like that would never have been in, and there are entire teams that, you know, kind of foolishly, I think, built their entire composition around building for that mechanic, which was clearly not working as intended. And in Destiny 1, they would totally have gotten away with it. Now in D2, it's just not the way it is. Beyond all of just that, like, look at the changes to the world in the game, too. Like, in D1, would you ever have seen them adding the Warmind bunkers?
Absolutely.
Like, the Seraph Vaults?
Yeah,
like,
very good example.
They would never have carved out a part of the Cosmodrome in Destiny 1 and created a whole new underground space in there. It would just never
it's very
have been
cool.
a thing.
I still do think, like, those bunkers were, I think, one of my favorite aspects of the entire, what was it, Season of the Worthy. Just the entire Doomsday counter on the wall. I just thought that was so impressive.
Dude,
and the way it was live. I wish it was
good.
still accessible, but just to have this giant, I think that was it was a very quiet period for Destiny and not a lot of people were paying attention. But still it was, I think that's such a good way for them to actually reveal the pyramids, and just one day seeing the orange triangles just inching closer and seeing the star map. That was so well done. I love that feature.
Oh, yes. 100% with you on that, man, then. Like, even the environmental artists team, they did a really fantastic job. Like, bravo to those guys and gals, because seriously, it's such a small thing, but the ominous sense of foreboding, and even the moment where the Warmind is talking to Zavala, and it just pulls up the map of the system, and you see pyramids coming from every side, it's like, okay. We're like, I thought this was maybe like a few years away, like maybe the end of next year we get to hear something, but like, oh no, they're coming. Okay, it's happening.
Yeah, it's actually happening. Like when they did
that was the oh shit moment. Yeah, right. It's
Finally.
the moment in it's the moment in Star Wars when the Death Star fires. It's like, oh god, that is an operational Death Star. You know, like this is when the whole thing just suddenly amps up to 11. You know, that was a big deal.
I mean, the pyramids have just always been just in the distance so long. I think we kind of got a bit desensitized to them. We're just like, hey, like we've been teased them forever. Whenever they show up, they show up. But then in Shadowkeep, when you actually see it under the moon, it was a cool moment, because it was like, obviously, whoa, look at this pyramid. But then it was like, there's not really much to do. It's still very mysterious, and it was bittersweet, because it was cool to see the pyramid, but it was also like they didn't really give us much. But then seeing with Arrivals, them actually, okay, the rest of the pyramids are coming, and it wasn't just like I was expecting, like you said, maybe we won't see the pyramids for years, but seeing them actually, no, the pyramids are here, and then there's another pyramid, and then now they're all here, and now they're destroying Titan and Mercury, and they're actually doing stuff, and now they're giving us loot, and they're giving us subclasses. So it's like, and there's one on Europa as well. The pyramids there, they're definitely not playing about, which is nice to see. Finally, after 6 years, when we saw that first concept art of the pyramids, we're finally actually getting them.
You know something? I think if it hadn't been due to the delays because of real-world circumstances, obviously, this Season of the Arrivals might have been remembered as the best season in all of Destiny's seasonal content. Yep. And I say that quite confidently, because these next 2 months, or however long it's going to be, is going to make it feel a little bit slow. And that's understandable, because that's 2 months of content that is basically being stretched, and they were not planning necessarily for all of this. Like, we'll have Festival of the Lost, we'll have some Iron Banners. They're clearly delaying some parts of the season that are supposed to go when the next season is coming along. And that's going to be things like the final Eris Morn contact mission. That's, you know, all of that stuff's fine. But when it comes down to it, if this had all been finishing up, and if we were diving into the next season within the next few days, as opposed to in a couple of months, yeah, it would be one of the craziest times in Destiny right now. And fundamentally, this would be one of the best times in Destiny's history. I really do feel like these last 2 months, even as they're dragging things out, it's not something that can take away from how fantastic this last season has been. Lore-wise, like, story-wise, again, gameplay-wise. Systems-wise, Umbral Engrams.
This year, just gameplay-wise, has been a bit, you know... I mean, I guess for hardcore players, again, that's why I always try to think from perspectives. As someone who's been playing the game since 2014, you have to, especially as a creator with a voice, you have to think about all different levels of exposure versus someone who's been playing since the alpha, someone who started playing with Destiny 2, someone who just started playing last month with Beyond Light. There's those three people will have such different perspectives on Destiny. Sometimes I kind of struggle to think like, how do I think? Because realistically, I understand why a veteran player might be unhappy with this and might think the game is really boring, there's nothing to do. I understand how a new player would be like, this game's amazing, there's so much to discover. So and there's no right answer, but so many people have so many different perspectives on Destiny right now. There's a lot of, again, like I said, from a 2014 alpha vet to someone that just picked up last month or that is going to pick up maybe on the Xbox Game Pass in November. They're all going to have such different perspectives on Destiny, and it's just, yeah, it's hard to kind of know what to think sometimes.
For sure.
I think the one of the most telling, one I did want to ask you about is, what do you think they're going to do with the season timing? Because obviously this new season is going to start the new expansion is going to start in November. So a lot of people are wondering how are they going to, like, is all the new content going to start in November, or are they going to, because they're not going to start a new season in December and have a season be 1 month long. Are they just going to push them all? They're going to make shorter seasons? Like, how is that even going to work? We've got a season launching in November.
So I think they've guaranteed that there'll be 4 new seasons coming next year. And even with this big delay, I have a feeling that just means they're going to cram the seasons a little bit more. So you'd probably be looking, as opposed to a season being like 12 weeks, you'll probably be seeing that pushed down to maybe like 10.
Yeah, they might just shave a bit off.
Shave a bit off of each one and then just like work with what you've got, And ultimately that's going to make some effects, but in a certain sense, it might make next year feel a lot more active. Like, yes, they've got the problem of it's not as though they've delayed this and suddenly they've got the same amount of content. No, like, time has been lost because of the nature of the real world right now. And, they are saying they needed more time to work on this, right? Like, that's very clear. It's quite simple. It's also to say then that they will need more time. They'll have had less time to work on this other stuff. The fact that there's less time for them to actually drop that in maybe makes it feel a little bit more compact and hopefully therefore a little bit more active. Because let's say it's only 5 big things you've got to look forward to in what will effectively be season 13, like the one after this launch. Season 13, I think.
Season 13.
If that's only got a few things going on with it and one persistent plot line throughout, and it only lasts 10 weeks, and the next big thing drops, that's actually not too bad.
Could be good,
like,
yeah.
That's one of those moments where you can sit back and you can be like, yeah, this is one of these points at which we actually got like a really consistent stream of content. I feel like for this next year too, it's going to be really important because there's a lot of new people coming to Destiny with Beyond Light. The fact that you will be able to, for the first time, wield darkness is also going to call back a lot of old players who would have looked at that as like a, potential milestone that Destiny is finally crossing. I really do feel like if they play it right, this could actually be quite advantageous, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, Fourth Element, I think there's a lot of reasons for people to, we see it every year, every September, now November. There's always the huge resurgence of people always come back to check it out. It's like you said, these days, a lot of people are taking breaks, a lot of people are playing other games, which is as to be expected. No game is designed to be played 24/7 every day, although we definitely try as content creators. But I mean, there's nothing tying you to the game, so it will be encouraged to. I think you're only doing yourself a disservice if you're burning yourself out playing now, because the good stuff is going to be coming in November, and that'll be the time to jump in. But now, like I said, gameplay wise, you'll enjoy it if you're a new player, and if shooting dregs would be fun to you. Players like us, shooting dregs isn't as fun. We've shot a lot of dregs in our lives, so it's not, doesn't get too exciting.
I've killed 1.25 million enemies in Destiny 2. I want to kill some new ones.
Exactly. But like, to some people, that obviously gameplay loop is fun still to newer players, to I guess more casual players if you don't play it very often. But then to some players, they obviously want more. They want new subclasses. They want a new element, a new planet, which is what we're getting, or a moon of a planet technically.
Yeah, destination. There's the word we're looking for.
Yeah, destination.
But yeah, dude, I am at this point in time which I'm just fascinated by the microcosm of everything, right? like, or the microcosms, I should say. Because I sit at the border between a whole bunch of different people, you know? I have a toe in the world where I have friends that are really sweaty PvP players and who are very good and who understand the core fundamentals of the game. And I also have my foot very much in the PvE world, and needless to say, I have a whole leg in the lore side of things. And then there's a whole bunch of friends that I have who just play it casually. And seeing all the different divergent perspectives on things really makes me appreciate how vast the fan base for this game is, you know? And even if it's like a really salty group of people just complaining about the game, or if there's one thing going wrong for one group of players or something in between, like, there is a diversity to it that I think is kind of joyful to witness, you know? Like, it's like a chorus of voices.
Yeah, and it's all cool, it's all completely varied, but yeah, sometimes if you go on Twitter, you might get the impression that Destiny is just completely falling apart and everything is going wrong. But yeah, that's why you need to obviously exercise a bit of caution when it comes to Twitter and opinions. Because sometimes it can seem a lot more, especially when there's, I notice it every year. Like, again, we've been doing this and observing the community for a long time, and we see it. It's like the seasons. You can predict it. You can just see how when things dry up and there's less to play, people get a bit more agitated. They're annoyed. They get more restless. They want to know things. And obviously, with the current situations, people are very stressed and people want stuff to do, games to play. And when there's nothing to do, they understandably get a little bit agitated. But thankfully, it will be hopefully remedied with Europa and some brand new content.
Until then, I think the message is put Destiny down if you're not feeling it. Just play something else. Have fun. Play Among Us. Find some buddies and play a great game. You know, like, doesn't matter what it is. If it's up to you, like, yeah, just do your thing. And if you still enjoy playing Destiny, if you still got stuff you want to get out of it, more power to you, man. Like, go for it. Like, it's your time. You do you.
Did you see the sniper rifle? The new, what is it called? Pinnacle? Pursuit?
Pursuit.
Powerful, what are they calling it these days?
They're calling it Pursuit weapon, I think.
They changed the name like every, what was it? Pinnacle, Powerful, Pursuit, what was the
Pinnacle, Ritual, and then now Pursuit.
This is Pursuit now. So it's essentially, hasn't been too well received. I mean, yeah, it's a cool looking gun, but obviously some people aren't too happy that it isn't geometrically new. It's obviously the beloved sniper with a scarf wrapped around it, and based on which activity you do.
There have been many memes. There have been memes. Or have you seen? I've got to ask you this. Have you seen the mountaintop with a scarf wrapped around it?
Yes, what was it called? What was the name? Oh, I can't find it. What was the name of it? Do you remember? It was called like the high up cliff. So I can't remember what the name was called. It was very funny. I wish I could find it.
Oh. But yeah, I think the good news is that Cosmo or Dylan, I think it was Dylan, very quickly picked up on the memes and the tweets and was like, few things here. First of all, the team has definitely picked up on the fact that you guys are not a fan of this stuff repeatedly coming back geometrically. So that's good to see that they're passing that along. But beyond all of that, they also stated, oh, and by the way, with Mountaintop, that's getting some tuning. We're not killing it, but we are trying to balance it.
Fair enough.
Which is very nice to see, because honestly, like, it needs it. It really does.
It needs a scarf wrapped around it. That's what it needs.
Yeah, it needs a little bit of a winter wrap-up, you know? It's been out there in the cold.
So you grind for the weapon, and then you can grind either Vanguard, Crucible, or Gambit to get an ornament, and that changes the color and design of the scarf that's wrapped around it. What was it called? The Adored, I believe, the new version of it.
And apparently, even though it looks like the Beloved with a scarf, it actually performs differently too.
I'd hope so, yeah.
Yeah, Lord knows what kind of sniper this is, but if Bungie is trying to make this functionally different, you know, the real shoe-ins for this are going to be either the 140 rapid-fire snipers or the really low rate of fire 72 RPM snipers. So we'll see which direction they go with this, but yeah, it's going to be interesting.
And we'll see if it becomes the new hated sniper like Revoker. We'll see if it can live up to that title.
We shall see.
It's already been birthed into meme culture. It's already famous. And there was the armor that they show off, the new vendor armor set, which also some people, you know, it's an acquired taste. It's not the most, you know, sleek looking armor set, we'll put it that way, but it's a cool armor set, and it's new vendor armor, so you can't really complain. Like it's better than not having it, but yeah, I don't think a lot of people were too fond of the hunter in specific. I mean hunters, like, just by this point, I think everyone knows hunters need to be just like, well, again, it's not everyone thinks this way, but most people, hunters want to be slim and just like cool looking and have cool cloaks, and you don't want hunters looking like titans, looking all bulky and just like these puffy armor sets. But again, some people love it. Like, I remember talking to the Bungie designer who designed Orpheus Rig at one of the Bungie events, and I was saying how I wish, this was before Exotic Ornaments, I remember saying how I wish there was like obviously I love Orpheus Rig, but I was saying how I wish there was a slimmer version. I wish you could just like, slim it down.
It didn't look like you were wearing baggy jeans.
Exactly. Right? Like that was obviously, Orpheus Rig is probably my most used exotic ever. I just would never take those things off. But I remember him saying how he really loves the baggy look, and that was a very like kind of interesting point of where I just realized the perspective of the person who creates the thing and the person who consumes the thing, and the person who literally created the Orpheus Rig was telling me like, oh no, I really like the baggy. And I was like, oh yeah, interesting. I guess some people would really like that design, and it's not everyone thinks the exact same way. Not everyone wants the slim down look, and it was like, oh yeah, well I guess, and it kind of made me think, well, if the designer of the thing thinks it looks good that way, then you know what, I'm just gonna agree, because the designer is always right. Whoever made the thing clearly has some taste.
And coincidentally, sometime later, a slim Orpheus Rig ornament arrived
eventually.
So,
this year?
This, I believe, in this last like 12 months, last 4 seasons or so. I will say this though, dude, when it comes down to the actual armor that they've added here, I feel like Bungie, and maybe this is a critique where you can pick up on it, but I was talking about this with Drexus Animations earlier, and I coined the term Guardian Punk, which is basically to say that it's kind of like the armor that we see here, where it's a bit like beat up and bruised, and like there's clear battle wearing and scratches, and some of it's a bit baggy, and it's in stark contrast to what we got in a lot of Destiny 1, where a lot of our armor was smooth and built to fit and
slick.
Felt a lot more sort of slick. Or if it wasn't, it was playing on a similar kind of aesthetic with a very noble feel. You had things such as the Iron Banner, Rise of Iron, Iron Lord's armor, and the other side of things would be sort of taking cues from none of this and would be the actual trophies of our enemies. So that would be things like our raid armor, the strike uniques that we got. And the cool thing was that you could build around any of these aesthetics, but I feel like Bungie has leaned way too hard on things that are either a little bit mundane for what they end up being, or alternatively, they lean on Guardian Punk. And that's kind of a thing that I feel that at least I know that in my circles of friends and amongst myself, I would very much appreciate armor that kind of returns to that sleek Destiny 1 feel.
You're definitely not alone with that.
Yeah, and also, like, it's okay to explore themes, I just really want them to be interesting, right? So, King's Fall, right? The armor behind King's Fall, the Titan armor looks absolutely incredible. You're a miniature war priest. You've got the helmet, which is just like this giant jaw of something.
One of the best.
And it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Like, Vault of Glass, the hunter, where you actually had an entire Vex leg, right? And that plays into lore and stuff, but, you flowed with the aesthetic, right? Like, that made so much sense. All of these different armor designs, it goes into the thing of you want to wear what you killed, right? Fast forward to, say, Wrath of the Machine and Last Wish. I actually really like Last Wish armor, but I think that it still misses, like, a really big... it misses a really big opportunity. Of not being a Hamkara bone, right? Like not literally being covered in the bones of the thing that you killed.
It was all an Eververse, unfortunately. Right? The Ahamkara armor set was the Eververse armor set of the season, which was, why a lot of people were unhappy about that, because you have this kind of very standard looking set, but what you would expect from a raid with the final boss being an Ahamkara, you would expect to be able to wear some Ahamkara bones. You wanted an entire, skull of Ahamkara, just an armor set, but that was in Eververse, which was definitely, it was
And on the flip side of things, go ahead and take, say, I said Wrath of the Machine earlier. That's not actually what I meant. I meant Scourge of the Past. Scourge of the Past, you get black armor gear, which thematically does make sense, but it's a raid against Fallen that have taken advanced technology and grafted it. So why not play on that theme? I would much rather come out of that raid looking like one of the Berserker enemies than looking like what I do.
Yeah.
Because instead of playing into the pristine theme of the Black Armory, why not play into this thing where it's saying, hey, the Fallen took this Black Armory tech and grafted it to their own stuff, and it's actually pretty powerful. I'm going to throw that on my shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, like, they could have explored the themes of taking what our enemy has so much more. Like, back in Taken King, Luke Smith hit it on the head.
I was about to say that.
Wear his ass as a hat, right? Like, that they've got to return to that philosophy. Wear his ass as a hat is the number one thing that players loved about strike uniques, about raid stuff.
Yeah, it was.
One, like, these are things that are good. And like, by that same token, it makes some sense then that you have raids that can have slightly different rewards. Like, what's it called? Galran. What raids? Crown of Sorrow. Like, Crown of Sorrow's rewards, I think, are pretty good. Like, I understand the theme, and I understand the reasoning behind them being there, and the fact that they're not completely Hive makes some sense. And I'm totally okay with that, because it's this opulent reward from Callus. Like, it fits in with everything that's going on there.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest with it, the fact that it's a mix of a Hive Cabal raid in terms of all the placement makes sense for it to have that different armor set. But like, yeah, we need to get back to wearing our enemies' asses as hats, basically.
You hit the nail on the head with that, which is something I hadn't really, because obviously the armor design in Destiny 1 versus Destiny 2 has been people have been talking about this for a long time, just about how, I guess it's mainly Destiny 1 players, because as you said, but I never thought about it in the way that you put it then. You definitely hit the nail on the head in that a lot of the Destiny 1 armor was based off of enemies and just stealing their stuff and kind of just fashioning it. But in Destiny 2, it seems... Armor in Destiny 2 seems more like thematic, like you said. It's based on the destination or the theme or the enemy. But I feel like in Destiny 1, the armor was a lot more just wild and random, and as if the designers just took a bunch of... They weren't too set on fitting a theme, and they just like, you know what, let's just have Darkblade's head as a helmet.
Exactly,
there you go. Boom.
Dude, right?
Does it look good? Or the Maul's Maulers just...
What better example than Darkblade helm? Like, not just of the whole wearing your enemy's ass as a hat, but also of making something truly iconic, you know? Like, it was literally something where you could take the aesthetic of your enemies and you just ran with it, you know? And players loved that because that strike made an impact. I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely.
You know? Like, more of that, please. God, how I would love to take something really cool, like, say, a helmet for Warlocks that looks like Brachion from the Pyramidion, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's basically the Vex Hydra head with like the little antlers behind it, but there's a multitude of them. How cool would that be as a strike unique? I'd trade my Silicon Neuroma in for that any day, dude. You know?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I never really thought about it like that, but yeah, that is probably the best way to summarize it, is that a lot of Destiny 1 armor was based off of just scrapping stuff off of your enemies, but Destiny 2, it's a lot more... Like, it's a lot more themed based. Not to say that all the Destiny 2 armor is bad, because there's definitely some great looking armor, but for the most part, it's very sensible and very kind of, I guess, not as, you know, flamboyant and random as Destiny 1 was. But yeah, Destiny 2, but it's been a long running complaint. And of course, we can't not mention probably one of the biggest areas with the Hunter Cloaks. Definitely. Well, I guess to be fair, most of them, even the Warlock Bonds, would you say?
Bonds are a lot less showy than they used to be, and I'm very sad about it. You know, like,
and Titan Marks are a bit...
Titan Marks are hit and miss. Like, I don't know. I feel like Hunters have some good cloaks, but by that same token, I'm not a Hunter main, so I completely understand where the complaints come from, because you had the Speaker cloaks for starters.
I was about to say.
Like,
I was literally about to say, I just envisioned the colours ones.
D1 Vanilla, you had great stuff.
Yeah. Literally, the
Wish we could
Speaker's
go back to that.
inventory in D1 Vanilla has some of the best cloaks in Destiny history. Like, all those designs, so good looking. But that shouldn't be too hard. I'm sure Bungie can add some more cloaks, and especially with transmog, hopefully we can mess them around. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I think... But yeah, the armor set... Going back to the what is it? The Vanguard? Where did you get the set from? What's it earned from? This new.
So basically, it's a new set of geometry, but you can earn it from Hunter. Sorry, you can earn it for Hunter, Warlock, or Titan from any of the sources. So Vanguard, Crucible, or Gambit.
Right, vendor rank ups.
It's the same geometry to all of the armor. It's just going to be a different page scheme and like iconography. So you can see the hunter in the piece of key art that they've provided there has got the Crucible two-headed eagle, two-headed phoenix rather, you know, which is emblematic of the Crucible, and it's got the black and red for the Crucible colors. Yeah. Whereas on the Warlock one, it's got the two Gambit snakes with black and green. So yeah.
Like, and then that will change based on, I guess, the activity.
Yeah, and where you got it from.
Interesting. And then they also said what we're getting Adept Trials weapons finally, which is good. And then they're playing with the idea of Adept Strike weapons in season 13. So
ooh, that I didn't read, but that's good. That really is good.
Yeah, it's a season 13 thing, and they haven't confirmed it, but they said they're planning on doing it, some kind of Adept Strike weapons, which is, you know, it's not complete, but you know, it's Bungie sharing their future plans, which is always nice.
Which is a very good idea, and it's another good reward that you could throw into the pool for things like GMs. Like GMs are already really rewarding.
I think that's probably how they'll do it. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to get like a Adept weapon as like a really low completion chance from that particular thing. Like, yeah, that'd be a very compelling reason to play those things.
I mean, as long as they just keep up just building the game, not making the game too wide in terms of like, which have done a good job. They're just obviously limiting the amount of activities there are. If they're building the game tall as opposed to wide, is the saying, is adding more depth to the core activities like Vanguard and Crucible and Strikes, which are the three, you know, Vanguard, Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit, which is the kind of the core of the game. But if they just keep on fleshing that out, then we should be good. But yeah, it's been a decent week, but we should be getting more info. What they're revealing? Have they said what they're revealing soon? They've done the subclasses, but I think up until now we're probably waiting for more anti-cheat announcements and more raid details. But yeah, it's looking good so far. But
I hear that we'll be getting a preview at some point soon of balance passes too, which should be very interesting to see.
Oh yeah, that was the one.
It's things like 110 hand cannons that are apparently getting looked at, which, I'm really interested to see what they do with that, because I know that at certain points, DMG and Cosmo were collecting feedback on various different sites for that, like Twitter and Reddit. So we'll get some interesting things on that, I believe. Yeah,
it's looking good. So thank you for joining me once again, Bife. Like I said, we could chat for hours, but I will let you go and I will save the listeners' time until next time. But like I said, it's not the last you'll hear from Bife. We're still getting things set up. Like I said, the audio versions should be going live as well as the clip versions. And yeah, so look out for more episodes. Bife, anything you're working on? What have you got that the people can look forward to? Any exclusive lore?
Hidden behind Barb, I actually have the schedule for my entire month worth of video stuff. And it's like a video every other day.
That is a lot of content, I can see.
Yeah, I'm planning on keeping stuff rolling. It's just going to be one of these moments where I need to just keep throwing coal into the machine, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And that means it's a lot of T-Slape stuff. It means it's a lot of Destiny stuff. There's some Warframe stuff going out there too, and in between all of that, working on some big projects. I showed you this post-show, but it's more of the interesting stuff to do with the complete Story of the Darkness video, which is going to be
maybe one day you can show a teaser, but until then, you've got some. Well, I can tell you as a fact, I've seen it. Bife has some very good content on the way, some very cinematic. Bife doesn't spare an expense. He gets artists, he gets designers, he gets voice actors. We've seen what Bife's premium content is that he works on for a long time, and he's got some good stuff in the works.
Oh yes, very, very, very excited.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.
Adios.